tuning in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with The Advocate. It's Thursday, January 4th, 2021. You can, of course, catch us on AOC 1 on the AOC Community Media channel on YouTube and on Cypress Street Radio at aocinc.org. You can find print versions of these stories and more at theadvocate.com. We couldn't bring you this community service without the generosity of our volunteer newsreaders. Today, we're joined by Daniel Rayburn. Welcome to Local News Live, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to get out of your way and let you read the news and go listen on Cypress Street. Thanks again.
Good morning, Acadiana. As usual, it is my pleasure to be here with you today, bringing you the local and state news and all in between. We have quite a few headlines to look at today, so I think we're going to jump right in. We'll be starting locally. And our first headline reads, "Local coronavirus spread slows a bit." This is brought to us by Ben Myers. Acadiana coronavirus infections spread as fast as ever in the first week of 2021, with the percentages of tests resulting in new cases at all-time highs. But the state's daily reports over the subsequent week were more encouraging, with new cases increasing at similar rates as new tests. Hospitalizations appear to have stabilized for now, with the first week-over-week declines reported this week since December 28th. More than 13% of Region 4 tests resulted in new cases over 7-day periods ending on January 4th, January 5th, and January 6th, exceeding the previous high mark by a full percentage point. That is according to the weekly Date of Test report, which allocates test results to the dates that tests were taken. The weekly reports are published on a 7-day lag, so it will not be known until January 20th if the case-to-test ratio continued to rise. But the daily reports, which publish test results as the state receives them from labs, point to a possible plateau in the second week of January, albeit a high one. Newly reported cases declined to 10% over the week ending in January 13th, while newly reported tests increased by 10%. That is the widest gap between new test growth and new cases in nearly a month. It follows several days of comparable changes in rolling weekly cases and test counts. In the previous week, new cases were growing at triple and quadruple the rates of new tests. Still, the weekly Acadiana caseload in the 7-parish region remains about 2,000, a watermark that is comparable with other critical outbreak points in the summer and late fall. While COVID-19 hospitalizations have stalled in the low 200s for several days, that too is a historically high mark. By way of comparison, on October 13th, 3 months ago, during a slower period of the pandemic in Acadiana, there were 286 new cases reported over 7 days, and local hospitalizations counted 50 COVID-19 inpatients. On to our next headline. It reads, "Business leaders see improvement in 2021 if coronavirus is conquered." And this is brought to us by Ken Stickney. The effects of the coronavirus-related recession have largely fallen on women, small businesses, and low-income workers, the Acadiana Advocate's 2021 Economic Outlook Panel discussion revealed on Wednesday. But insights from the local panel suggest a more robust economy this year, and perhaps full recovery for most areas of the economy by 2022. Gary Wagner, economics professor at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, said he's, quote, cautiously optimistic for 2021 as the COVID-19 vaccine effort progresses, with, quote, much stronger recovery in 2021's second half. The Lafayette region is some 8,000 jobs down since February, but those jobs should be significantly recovered by early 2022. For higher income earners, that would be $60,000 and up, he said, the pandemic recession has largely ended, with employment down by about 1%. For others, the pandemic has been less forgiving. Quote, "For individuals earning less than $27,000 per year, employment is 20% below where it was before the COVID pandemic. And using credit card transactions, 30% of small businesses in the state are idle or doing significantly less business when compared to January of last year," he said. "We have a long way to go, and there are a lot of people around the state who are hurting." Many of those job losses are in the leisure and hospitality sector. Anita Bagno, CEO of Downtown Development Authority and Downtown Lafayette Unlimited, said the struggle for restaurants and night spots is apparent in the city's central business district. She said restaurants have transformed their businesses into to-go services, with lots of that growth reflected by waiters' rebound. Quote, "It's different from restaurant to restaurant," she said. "Dining spots with outdoor seating have had some success, although that may be leveling off." Other factors may hasten downtown Lafayette's recovery, including the pandemic's end, which would draw more office workers back downtown and more residential construction. The latter would encourage more downtown employees to remain near their jobs and eat at restaurants and shop at retail outlets there, Bagno said. She said some downtown residential projects have been completed of late, while others are expanding and some are in the works. Wagner said some home sales continue to help drive the region's economy, something that may not abate soon. She said interest rates are historically low and may remain so for another couple of years, and unlike in the 2008 recession, prospective homebuyers will not be mortgaged to the hilt. Chad Ortiz, a partner at Scout Real Estate Company, said the economy will improve when people return to their business offices, which he said will help companies innovate. Quote, "It's important for companies to have teamwork and synergy," he said, which is aided by working in one spot. He said the demand for commercial and office space remains, and there are available properties for companies. Quote, "We can build anything," he said. Healthcare, hard-pressed by caring for COVID-19 patients and now with distributing the vaccine, expects a better year in 2021. Quote, "It would be hard to be worse from a business standpoint," said Pat Gandy Jr., Chief Operating Officer at Ochsner Lafayette General Medical Center, who cited 2 hurricanes in addition to the pandemic. Quote, "But we are excited about 2021, he said. We're looking at the coming year with optimism. Once we get the pandemic under control, we will free up healthcare resources." He said the heavy loads of COVID patients have prevented the hospital from taking care of some trauma patients because of a lack of available beds. The hospital's goal is to treat patients here. But Gandy said he believes the change in presidential administrations will benefit healthcare, and in 2021, Ochsner will invest up to $95 million in improvements. That includes a new tower and new resources, more capacity, and more jobs within 18 months. Jobs are always on Corey Jack's mind, he said. He's owner of Jack & Associates, which consults for entrepreneurs, and is a manager of Lafayette affairs for One Acadiana. Jack said 2020 was a challenging year for small businesses, those that accessed loans to keep them afloat, those that pivoted from their core services or products in the face of the pandemic, and those that were started anew during the pandemic. He said some small businesses were innovative enough to survive, even without easy access to capital. In some cases, he said that the, quote, micro businesses with 1 or 2 employees lacked the time or skill set to seek and secure loans. Only about 12% got all they needed. He said One Acadiana was able to provide some webinars for its small business partners to help them navigate the business environment of the pandemic recession. Troy Wayman, president and CEO for One Acadiana, said the pandemic opened opportunities for the workforce to improve itself through his organization's 55 by 25 campaign, which seeks to elevate the region's workforce to 55% of workers holding a 2-year or 4-year degree or a certified skill by 2025. About 38% hold those skills now. Improved workforce credentials, he said, would lure more investment in the region. Quote, "This has been an opportunity to get people back to school," he said. "We want to get them back in, enrolled, and to complete degree or certifications." He also said partners are helping bridge the digital divide in the region, providing new ways to access the internet for work and school. Wagner said he's more encouraged about a regional economic comeback now than he was 6 months ago. He said he's been tracking mortgage defaults and bankruptcy filings and not seeing anything worse than in the past. Quote, "Once the vaccine rollout is more widespread, it'll open up more sectors of the economy. More growth," he said. "The timing and strength of recovery depends almost entirely on vaccine rollout." The energy industry, he said, remains the highest paying sector in Acadiana, but it now accounts for only about 10% of wages here. There are fewer than 12,000 employees directly involved in the industry. Quote, oil and gas service firms are reporting increased activity, but I do not think it'll be enough to move the needle when it comes to rehiring people. And now our next headline. Guillory isolating after virus exposure. Lafayette Parish Mayor President Josh Guillory is in quarantine after being notified of coronavirus exposure. Guillory was contacted by Dr. Tina Stefanski, the regional health director, and was notified that he had close contact within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes with someone who tested positive for COVID-19, according to a statement from spokesperson Jamie Angel. Guillory promptly began self-isolation after Stefanski gave him guidance. Stefanski's medical advice is that Guillory is to remain in quarantine until Saturday at a minimum, with 2 negative tests 48 hours apart. While in quarantine, Guillory will remotely conduct the daily duties of the office, remaining in communication with other elected officials, and providing direction to department heads, according to the statement. Guillory has had no symptoms, and an initial COVID-19 test administered Tuesday night was negative, Angel said. Guillory will be tested again prior to returning to the City Parish Hall. Contrary to misinformation circulating on social media, Guillory had no knowledge of his exposure until the notification from Stefanski, according to the statement. A member of the local media was seated next to Guillory at the swearing-in ceremony for the Lafayette City Marshal on Friday. Earlier in the week, that person was in direct contact with someone who tested positive and was directed to follow CDC guidelines for isolation, Angel said. Shortly after the event, a second COVID-19 test for the same person was positive. Guillory was not notified of his potential exposure until Stefanski contacted him Tuesday afternoon. And now, we'll take a short break from the headlines for this. Everyone should have shelter, and Louisiana nights are getting colder. Due to COVID-19 and concerns for community spread, there has been a dramatic decrease in available shelter beds. That means many experiencing homelessness may have no other option than to sleep on the street. Throughout this pandemic, Acadiana Regional Coalition on Homelessness and Housing has been able to utilize local hotel and motel rooms as a temporary housing solution. From there, case managers help our fellow Acadians transition to permanent housing. Arch is very proud of their success in keeping those they serve safe from COVID-19 and on their way to long-term stability. However, the number of homeless is growing, and Arch needs your help to get our neighbors out of the cold and into warm and safe housing. Can you help today? If so, go to archacadiana.org. If you would prefer to give by check, please mail to Arch, ARCH, at P.O. Box 3936, Lafayette, Louisiana, 70502. And now we'll return to our local headlines. Our next reads, 1 person killed in morning home fire. State Fire Marshal's Office deputies are investigating a fatal mobile home fire in Opelousas, KATC-TV reported. The Opelousas Fire Department responded to the 200 block of Elementary Lane just before 1 a.m. Wednesday. They said 1 person in the home was killed in a fire. No further information was available. A secondary headline, Eunice man arrested in connection with shooting. An 18-year-old Eunice man was arrested in connection with a January 6 shooting, KATC reported. Eunice Police Chief Randy Fontenot said DeMonte Gallo was arrested and booked into the St. Landry Parish Jail on a charge of principal to attempt first-degree murder. Gallo was arrested in connection with the January 6 shooting in the 700 block of Lewis Street in Eunice. Police said a juvenile was shot during the incident. Fontenot said an investigation into the shooting is ongoing. And another under crime. Interstate 10 crash leaves 1 driver dead. The Rain Police Department on Wednesday was investigating a fatal 2-vehicle crash on Interstate 10 in which 1 vehicle caught fire. The crash left the eastbound lane of I-10 closed for some time, according to a statement from the department. Ragin police received a call regarding a crash and a vehicle on fire on I-10 eastbound near the on-ramp about 6:45 a.m. Wednesday. The initial investigation revealed a pickup truck was traveling westbound on I-10 and crossed the median, striking an 18-wheeler, which was traveling eastbound. Both vehicles then entered the median with the pickup truck catching on fire. The driver and a passenger of the 18-wheeler were transported to a Lafayette hospital for evaluation. Police said the driver of the pickup truck was killed in the crash, and his name will not be released until the family can be notified. The investigation is ongoing. And now we'll move to our next headline, which reads, Lafayette OMV to reopen Thursday. The Lafayette location of the Louisiana Office for Motor Vehicles will reopen Thursday by appointment only. The state office announced on January 4th that the Lafayette office would be closed until further notice due to an employee testing positive for COVID-19. Matthew Boudreau, a spokesperson for the office, confirmed on Wednesday that the Lafayette office would reopen Thursday morning by appointment only. Appointments can be scheduled online at expresslane.org. Many OMV services are also available on the website. OMV locations across the state have temporarily closed during the pandemic because of COVID-19 outbreaks. The state agency has encouraged people to utilize the website for services to limit exposure and reduce the spread of the virus. Now on to a state headline, which reads, Louisiana representatives vote on party lines. This is brought to us by Taylor Bridges. The U.S. House impeached President Donald Trump on Wednesday for instigating last week's rampage at the U.S. Capitol to try to overturn his election defeat. But Louisiana's 4 Republican members voted against the motion. U.S. Representative Cedric Richmond, a Democrat of New Orleans, was the lone member of the Louisiana delegation to vote for the single article of impeachment and asked the Senate to expel him from office. The motion would pass 232 to 197. In a 1-minute speech, Richmond said Trump incited, quote, the insurrection, and said, quote, some of my colleagues, in their latest attempts to placate and please this unfit president, suggest that we shouldn't punish Trump for his actions in order to unify this country. This is a climax of foolishness. Let me suggest to them, stand up, man up, and woman up, and defend this Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, including Donald J. Trump. Trump is the only president to have been impeached twice. The 4 Republican members from Louisiana joined most of their GOP colleagues in opposing impeachment. 10 Republicans broke ranks with Trump to vote for the motion. U.S. Representatives Steve Scalise, Mike Johnson, Clay Higgins, and Garrett Graves have all condemned the rioters, with Scalise and Johnson saying a vote for impeachment would tear the country apart when unity is needed. Scalise, the number 2 House Republican, who represents suburban New Orleans, was the only one of the 4 to address the House. He lamented the, quote, unacceptable violence committed by, quote, anarchists, but said, we need to be focused on toning down the rhetoric. I've seen the dark evil of political violence firsthand, and it has to stop. A gunman shot Scalise in 2017, nearly costing him his life. Quote, I oppose this rushed impeachment going forward without a single hearing, Scalise added. The Senate will not take this up until President Trump has left office. So let's keep in mind it will only serve to further divide a nation that is calling out for healing. But Democrats questioned why Republicans are calling for healing now, after more than half of them, including all 4 Republicans from Louisiana, sought to throw out millions of ballots cast legally in refusing to certify electors for President-elect Joe Biden a week ago. Democrats also said Trump inflamed his followers to storm the Capitol by falsely claiming repeatedly in recent weeks that he had won the election and that Biden could become president only through fraud. 5 people, including a Capitol police officer, died during the mob assault by Trump followers. Johnson, of Benton, used similar language to Scalise in voting against impeachment. Quote, the shameful violence that occurred on the Capitol grounds January 6th demands a strong, unified congressional response, Johnson said in a statement. This rushed, snap impeachment effort is the opposite of that. It involved no regular order or thoughtful deliberation, and is not helping to heal and unify our country, but further divide it. Clay Higgins, in a statement, called the vote, quote, a Democrat political stunt. Graves hasn't said publicly why he voted against impeachment, and his staff has failed to return repeated calls seeking an explanation. The impeachment vote reflects a push by Democrats to remove Trump from office before he steps aside for Biden on January 20th. But that won't happen because impeachment is only the first step in the process. The Senate still must hold a trial and vote to convict. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said the Senate won't hold that trial before January 19th. With Democrats taking control of the Senate on January 20th, that trial still seems likely to go forward. On Wednesday, Democrats and a handful of Republicans echoed Richmond's words in saying Trump presented a clear danger and needs to be forced out now. One Democrat called him, quote, a white supremacist. Another called him, quote, the most dangerous man ever to occupy the Oval Office. And yet another said of Trump, he is unfit to hold office. One Republican called the impeachment effort, quote, divisive, while others said it flies in the face of all efforts to heal our nation. Some Republicans condemned Trump's comments last week, but said the House was making a rush to judgment and imposed impeachment. Several Republicans who voted to subvert the votes of the presidential electors said they now accept that Biden will be the next president. Richmond's speech marked his final remarks to the House. He is resigning on Friday after 10 years to become a senior advisor to President-elect Biden. Quote, we told you last time if you didn't impeach him, this would happen again, Richmond said. Simply put, we told you so. Richmond out, the congressman said in completing his remarks. And to our next headline, which reads, panel to debate police lawsuit protection. Chokehold bans, car cameras also to be discussed. And this is brought to us by Will Sintel. A task force studying police practices Thursday will debate trimming police protection against lawsuits alleging abuse, requiring vehicles to have dashboard cameras that are activated when an officer gets out, and new rules for no-knock policies. The 25-member panel is also set to consider a possible law that requires police under investigation to undergo lie detector tests, making chokeholds a civil rights violation, and making it easier to prove that officers were guilty of misconduct. The issue stemmed from a month-long study by the Police Training, Screening, and De-escalation Task Force. The legislature last year authorized the study after Minneapolis police killed George Floyd in May, which set off protests worldwide. The proposed changes are among the ideas submitted by subcommittees of the task force. State Senator Chloe Fields, a Democrat of Baton Rouge, chairman of the committee, has said he plans to introduce legislation that stems from the study for the 2021 regular legislative session, which begins on April 12th. Quote, that would basically give us an opportunity to address some of the problems we have, Fields said Wednesday. He said the hearings have been marked by bipartisan cooperation. The study group includes lawmakers, police officers, and criminal justice professors from LSU and Southern University. At least 18 changes in police practices are scheduled for debate at 10 a.m. Thursday and 9 a.m. Friday. Qualified immunity is designed to protect police officers against baseless civil lawsuits that claim abuse. Critics contend the rules need to be changed to make police more accountable and to reduce police brutality. A bid to reduce immunity policies were rejected by a state House committee in June, which Republicans mostly opposed and Democrats supported. Exactly how the task force would change policies is unclear. Officials said that they are still hammering out details in advance of Thursday's hearing, as well as possible changes in no-knock warrants. Another proposal would require all police vehicles to have a dashboard camera that would be activated when an officer gets out. In addition, police officers would be required to wear a body camera that would be turned on when he or she gets out of the vehicle. Although cameras are becoming more common, critics complain they are often left off during critical moments. While most police departments have banned chokeholds, the task force will debate a proposal that would make chokeholds and cartoid holds a civil rights violation. It would also direct the Attorney General to craft a policy that prohibits chokeholds for law enforcement officers except when deadly force is authorized. Other possible changes up for discussion include bans on officers under scrutiny from reviewing body camera footage before they are interviewed, requiring police to take lie detector tests if they have legal representation, and requiring department employees to undergo anti-bias training before agencies can land state grant money. It would also require officers' disciplinary records to remain on file for at least 10 years. Another subcommittee recommendation would trim the threshold for police misconduct from willingly to, quote, knowingly or with reckless disregard. And now we'll step away from the headlines for a moment to bring you Today in History, as well as today's horoscopes. Our Today in History is brought to us by the Associated Press. Today is Thursday, January 14th, the 14th day of 2021. There are 351 days left in the year. Today's highlight in history. On January 14th, 1943, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and French General Charles de Gaulle opened a wartime conference in Casablanca. On this date in 1784, the United States ratified the Treaty of Paris, ending the Revolutionary War. Britain followed suit in April of 1784. In 1858, Napoleon III, Emperor of France, and his wife, Empress Eugenie, escaped an assassination attempt led by Italian revolutionary Felice Orsini, who was later captured and executed. In 1914, Ford Motor Company greatly improved its assembly line operation by employing an endless chain to pull each chassis along at its Highland Park, Michigan plant. In 1963, George C. Wallace was sworn in as governor of Alabama with the pledge, "Segregation Forever," a view Wallace later repudiated. In 1964, former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, in a brief televised address, thanked Americans for their condolences and messages of support, following the assassination of her husband, President John F. Kennedy, nearly 2 months earlier. In 1970, Diana Ross and the Supremes performed their last concert together at the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas. In 1972, the situation comedy Sanford and Son, starring Red Fox and Demond Wilson, premiered on NBC. In 1975, the House Internal Security Committee, formerly the House Un-American Activities Committee, was disbanded. In 1994, President Bill Clinton and Russian President Boris Yeltsin signed an accord to stop aiming missiles at any nation. The leaders joined Ukrainian President Leonid Kravchuk in signing an accord to dismantle the nuclear arsenal of Ukraine. In 2010, President Barack Obama and the U.S. moved to take charge in earthquake-ravaged Haiti, dispatching thousands of troops along with tons of aid. In 2013, Lance Armstrong ended a decade of denial by confessing to Oprah Winfrey during a videotaped interview that he used performance-enhancing drugs to win the Tour de France. 10 years ago this day, the National Republican Party ousted Chairman Michael Steele and chose Wisconsin Party Chief Rance Priebus to lead in the run-up to the 2012 presidential race. 5 years ago today, Chicago city attorneys released a grainy 2013 surveillance video showing the fatal shooting of a 17-year-old black carjacking suspect by a white police officer. 1 year ago today, Iran said authorities had made arrests for the accidental shoot-down of a Ukrainian passenger plane by an Iranian missile. And now we'll look at today's famous birthdays. Blues singer Clarence Carter has turned 85. Actor Faye Dunaway has turned 80 today. Actor Holland Taylor is 78. Actor Carl Weathers is 73. Singer-producer T-Bone Burnett also has turned 73. Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Maureen Dowd is 69. Rock singer Jeff Tate of Queen Screech has turned 62. Movie writer-director Steven Soderbergh is 58. Actor Mark Addy is 57. Former Fox News Channel anchorman Shepard Smith has also turned 57. Rapper Slick Rick is 56 today. Rock musician Zakk Wylde is 54. Rapper-actor LL Cool J has turned 53. Actor Jason Bateman has turned 52. Rock singer-musician Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters has also turned 52. Actor Jordan Ladd is 46. Retro soul singer-songwriter Mark Broussard is 39. And rock singer-musician Caleb Followill of the Kings of Leon is also 39 today. Now, moving to the day's horoscopes, we begin with Capricorn, which is birthdays of December 22nd to January 19th. An unexpected change will result if you have trouble making up your mind or you let your emotions take charge. Consider what you can do to ease stress and keep a loved one happy. For Aquarius, which is birthdays of January 20th to February 19th. Keep busy and do something constructive, and you'll avoid getting into a spat. Someone is likely to overreact or start something that could spin out of control. For Pisces, which is February 20th to March 20th birthdays. Someone will give you the wrong impression. Don't believe everything you hear. Check facts, and you'll discover the best way to handle a change of plans. For Aries, which is birthdays of March 21st to April 19th. Use your knowledge and insight to overcome adversity. Use discretion, and be clear and factual in your reason to others' ideas. Don't give in to demands. Just do what you can. For Taurus, which is April 20th to May 20th birthdays. Not everyone will share your concerns or beliefs. Be open to suggestions and use the information you get to assemble your thoughts and plans. If you want something done, be prepared to do the work yourself. For our Geminis, which is birthdays of May 21st through June 20th. Research, gather facts, and proceed alone if necessary. Refuse to get involved in a scheme that sounds too good to be true. Say no to manipulative individuals. For Cancer, which is birthdays of June 21st to July 22nd. Stick to creative projects and people you can trust to be honest with you. A change can be favorable if it doesn't entail joint endeavors or shared expenses. Do not take any risks. For Leo, which is birthdays of January 23rd to August 22nd. Don't be confused by the changes someone makes. Adjust and keep heading in a direction that will benefit you. Use your charm and physical attributes to get you what you want. To Virgo, which is August 23rd to September 22nd birthdays. Invest more time and energy into your home and family. Set up schedules and projects that will help bring you closer to people you love. Don't disregard someone else's feelings. For Libra, which is September 23rd to October 23rd birthdays. Less talk and more action will avert opposition. Take a disciplined approach to the way you deal with friends and family, and you will persuade everyone to pitch in and help. For Scorpio, which is birthdays of October 24th through November 22nd. An unanticipated change will leave you in a vulnerable position. A friend, relative, or colleague will let you down or lead you astray. Take a moment to collect your thoughts. And finally, for Sagittarius, which is birthdays of November 23rd through December 21st. An opportunity to change direction will entice you, but before you jump from one thing to another, consider the consequences. If uncertainty is apparent, rethink your strategy. And now, we will continue with another state headline, which reads, State leaders bracing for armed protest amid FBI warnings. This is written by John Zimmerman and Sam Carlin. Governor John Bell Edwards says he's hopeful a surge of protesters expected at the state capitol in the next week will stay peaceful, even as law enforcement agencies brace for violent chaos, with the FBI reportedly girding for armed protest in all 50 state capitals through Inauguration Day. A spokeswoman with the FBI's New Orleans field office said the agency was preparing along with state and local police for, quote, armed calls to action protests scheduled at the state capitol. State police, meanwhile, said they were anticipating protests, plural. Though state officials offered no firm details, law enforcement appears to be keying on a descent on the Capitol on Sunday or Wednesday, the day President-elect Joe Biden is to be sworn in as president after months of legal challenges, vitriol, and finally, a violent insurrection on January 6. The specter of a political power keg igniting at the seat of state government in Baton Rouge had Louisiana and federal authorities tight-lipped about whom they expect to show up, beyond the few dozen steady demonstrators who have come to the Capitol regularly since November to rail in peace over President Donald Trump's loss. Jacques Berry, a spokesperson for the Division of Administration, said none of the organizers of the pro-Trump rallies at the state capitol have filled out requests to hold events there, and none had been filed for the weekend. Governor Edwards said his administration is communicating with, quote, federal partners and monitoring the situation. Quote, I just put a call out to the people of Louisiana who are intending to participate that will protect your rights to do so. At the same time, we're asking that you make sure you follow the law, the governor said Tuesday. We'll remind you as you gather that you're doing so during a pandemic. And there's no doubt that last week's event at the U.S. Capitol became a super spreader event. State police are coordinating with the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office and Baton Rouge Police, along with the Department of Public Safety Police, for the expected crowds, officials said. Baton Rouge Police spokesperson Sergeant Ragin Cajuns Jr. said departments will have uniformed officers, mounted patrol, and some undercover officers present, quote, just to be there and make sure everything is good for everyone. The FBI said in a statement that its efforts will be, quote, focused on identifying, investigating, and disrupting individuals that are inciting violence and engaging in criminal activity. Edwards was quick to note that the protesters who have demonstrated outside the Capitol on previous weekends have done so with no lawlessness, no property damage, and no violence. And certainly, we expect that will continue. We hope that will continue. Trump supporters, in varying numbers, have turned out to the state capitol every weekend since Biden won the election to show support for the president. The Military Times reported Wednesday that some governors had begun activating their state's National Guard soldiers, in addition to thousands of National Guard troops mobilized to Washington, D.C., for security around the January 20th inaugural. But Governor Edwards' office gave no indication Wednesday that the governor was ready to deploy National Guard troops in advance of Louisiana's protest. A spokeswoman said he would do so, quote, if it becomes necessary. Edwards said he was, quote, angry and saddened by what he saw in the carnage and destruction at the U.S. Capitol last week, counting himself stunned during a week that he called a, quote, difficult and dark one for our country. It is beyond anything any of us should ever expect to see in the United States of America, he said. Attorney General Jeff Landry, a top Republican in Louisiana and one of the governor's frequent sparring partners, came out this week with a stern rebuke of his own for what he described as, quote, despicable violence at the U.S. Capitol last week, while cautioning against similar violent antics at the U.S. state houses. Landry sits on the board of the Rule of Law Defense Fund, an arm of the Republican Attorney General's Association, which he led last year. Media reporters have outed the fund for sending out robocalls promoting the, quote, March to Save America, which morphed into the Capitol riot. The bloody, haphazard insurrection left 5 people dead and members of Congress cowering. Landry issued a statement 2 days after the attack, expressing outrage and saying he was unaware of the robocalls. But he also broke this week with the larger national group of attorneys general over signing on to a condemnation of the violence. On Twitter Tuesday, Landry equated the U.S. Capitol mayhem with, quote, the violence, destruction, and looting in our nation last summer, referring to nationwide protests against racial injustice. Elsewhere, a pro-Trump rally is scheduled for Saturday in Lafayette, with organizers billing it as a peaceful gathering, though the Ambassador Row Shopping Center has declared its parking lot off limits to the group. Another sort of protest is being planned in New Orleans for January 20th, organized by an anti-Trump group that took to the streets 4 years ago in a demonstration that ended with vandalism and 15 arrests. Malcolm Suber, one of the organizers of the J20 NOLA rally and march to Duncan Plaza downtown, said he was less concerned with violence at the planned march next week than with the politics in Washington. Quote, "We're going out there because we don't believe the Democratic Party is the answer to the Trump administration and the working class people in this city," Suber said. He said the group wants a third party for workers and doesn't trust Democratic Party leaders to fight for what he has described as the, quote, menace that led to the Capitol riot. Quote, "They knew the menace was coming before last Wednesday and certainly didn't do anything to ask Capitol Police, the FBI, or the National Guard to prepare, as they prepared for the Black Lives Matter movement," he said. Suber, also a leader of the Take 'em Down NOLA movement that fought to remove Confederate monuments from the cityscape, said he expected a big police presence as usual around the demonstration. In the push to remove the monuments, opponents camped out and, quote, brandished their weapons at our events while, quote, threatening to drown us in blood many times, he said. But no major violence erupted. Quote, "We kept our militants," Suber said, not trying to play for the cameras and have a 60-second report on CNN. Moving to our next headline. Louisiana business owners ask for more aid. And this is brought to us by Timothy Boone. After 60 Louisiana business owners met virtually with members of Congress on Wednesday as part of a campaign to get more pandemic relief for small businesses. Quote, "We're thankful for the second round of Paycheck Protection Program funds, but that's a short-term solution," said Anna Tusa, who owns New Orleans restaurants Briquette and New Orleans Creole Cookery, along with Briquette Wine Room, a space for private events. Tusa said Congress needs to look at actions that will help small businesses in the long term, such as expanding access to capital, liability protection, and affordable health care for employees. Business at Briquette and Briquette Wine Room, which are both in the Warehouse District, has dropped off by 80% because the convention business in New Orleans has dried up due to the pandemic and efforts to control the spread of the disease. At New Orleans Creole Cookery in the French Quarter, business has dropped off 60%. That's forced Tusa to furlough employees and dip into her personal savings to keep the business going. Quote, "This is a hard time, and we're not the only ones hurting," she said. Tusa has tried to keep her employees working and money coming in by partnering with Revolutionary Foods to prepare meals for needy residents and sponsoring creative events, such as wine dinners at her restaurant. But her properties are in tourist areas of the city, so it's been difficult to lure people away from their neighborhood, she said. Quote, "We're scrappers. We survived Katrina," she said. "This is a struggle." The virtual Hill Day was sponsored by Goldman Sachs and the company's 10,000 Small Business Voices program, which aims to help small businesses grow. Ben Johnson, founder of Techno, a Lafayette-based information technology service company, said he was participating in the program to pass along information to people such as U.S. Representative Clay Higgins, a Republican of Lafayette. Quote, "We want to educate the people in government that represent us about our business concerns," Johnson said. "We want to plant seeds. We think that's how you help your business." Techno has been forced into a work-from-home operation, and revenue has dropped 25%, according to Johnson. Quote, "Luckily, we're in good shape financially," he said, noting that he followed the advice of successful businessmen such as Warren Buffett and Michael Bloomberg about keeping cash reserves in case of bad economic times. And now, we will take a look into sports. Our headline reads, 9 Ragin Cajuns seniors return for extra year of eligibility. This is brought to us by Kevin Foote. Well, the list is now official. 9 seniors will be returning to the UL Ragin Cajuns for an extra year of eligibility, granted by the NCAA because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The list includes quarterback Levi Lewis, guard Ken Marks, wide receiver Jalen Williams, defensive tackle Taylon Humphrey, defensive end Chauncey Monick, linebacker Farad Gardner, place kicker Nate Snyder, and the defensive tackles Blair Brooks and Cameron Solomon. Quote, "Those are some of the biggest recruits we signed this year, truth be known," said UL coach Billy Napier Wednesday on a Zoom call. Quote, "We're pleased with the group that's coming back. It's a unique group, but one that I think will bring good leadership to our 2021 team for sure." Napier made it clear he anticipated the entire senior group from the number 15 ranked Ragin Cajuns of 2020. Quote, "We're very pleased with those young men and those decisions and certainly very proud of the young men," he said. "Some are going to make a run at the National Football League and some are going to move on to their next stage in life. But this is a great group. Some are going and some are staying." Even more special of the 9 returning are those like Marks, Gardner, and Brooks, who were part of the program prior to Napier's arrival in 2018. Quote, "I think as a whole we're going to benefit a lot," Napier said. "Certainly there's some talent here. There's some ability. They've been productive. They certainly have contributed in a lot of different ways. But probably more than anything, what I value is these guys were here before we got here. They know what it's like. They've seen kind of the transformation. They've seen the work pay off. They value all the things that we've done to improve the player experience, and they've been a big part of us turning it around." Of the seniors that elected to not return, Elijah Mitchell and Trey Regis have left the biggest hole in the running back position. Mitchell is preparing for the Senior Bowl on January 30th in Mobile, Alabama, while Regis was invited to the East-West Shrine Bowl. That game has been canceled, but Regis will still get the opportunity to interview with all 32 professional football teams. Napier also addressed UL's recent haul of graduate transfers as well, including TCU wide receiver John Stevens, Kansas State defensive back Tyrone Lewis, Nebraska offensive lineman Matthew Anderson, Iowa State defensive lineman Latrell Bankson, and Kansas outside linebacker Clinton Onokuwaru. Quote, "What we've seen in the recruiting footprint that we're in, we have prior relationships with these kids," he explains. "I think that's where the root of these relationships started. Maybe having recruited them coming out of high school or recruited them coming out of junior college." Napier was not ready to announce the 2 new additions to the coaching staff, however, including reports that former Alabama coach and player Wes Neighbors will fill one of the vacancies. Quote, "We're in the middle of figuring that puzzle out," he said. "We're halfway there." The other primary function of Wednesday's Zoom meeting was to officially open up the Cajuns' offseason. Napier said the offseason begins Friday with the start of the, quote, "foundation phase," which focuses on things like structure, routine, process, expectations, and developing habits. That will last for 27 days. The identity phase begins on February 18th until March 16th. Spring football starts on March 16th until the spring game, which is slated for Thursday evening on April 22nd. Quote, "It's time to move on. It's time to move forward and turn the page," Napier said. It's also a time when coaching cliches are in full force. Quote, "It's important that we hit the reset button. We completely erase the board, and we start over in phase 1 Friday," he said. "There's no place for entitlement or complacency. Contentment is the enemy." And that is our final headline for today. Before we end, we will take a look at the funerals in the Acadiana area, and those include Gloria Benoit, who will have a service held at Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church at 3 p.m. Mary Klaus, who will have service at the St. Philomena Catholic Church in Lobdeville at 11 a.m. Elaine Robinson, whose service will be held at St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church at 10:30 a.m. And finally, Harold Winston Sr., with service at the Fountain Memorial Funeral Home in Lafayette at 11 a.m. This has been Local News Live for January 14th, 2021. I've been your reader, Daniel Rayburn. Join us at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday on AOC 1, Cypress Street Radio, or the AOC Community Media channel on YouTube. You can read these stories and more at theadvocate.com. And find out how to volunteer and more at aocinc.org. That's aocinc.org. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you'll listen in again tomorrow. Have a great day, Acadiana.